Hey everyone, imagine this. You're alone, 3 stories underground beneath the Vatican, flashlight dying, and something whispers your full name in perfect Latin, a name no one here should know. Then cold fingers trace the back of your neck like they're reading Braille on your spine. That happened to me on my 3rd night. My name's Alex. These are the stories that made me quit the holiest place on earth and realize some doors were sealed for a reason. If you're watching this at night, maybe pause and turn on all the lights. Or don't. Hit subscribe if you dare to hear what the church still denies happened, based on things I lived through, things that almost killed me. Let's start where it all began. Chapter 1, The Smell That Wasn't Incense. The fingers were ice, not cold like winter air, ice like they'd been carved from a glacier and left to drip on my skin. They didn't grab, they traced, slowly, from the base of my skull down the nape of my neck, pausing at every vertebra as if counting sins I hadn't confessed yet. And the smell, God, the smell, sweet rot pouring into my lungs, like syrup made from funeral flowers and old blood. That was the first time something touched me under the Vatican, and it knew exactly who I was before I even opened my mouth. Hey guys, if that already made your skin crawl, good, because what I'm about to tell you actually happened. My name is Alex Harper, 28 years old back then, raised in a nowhere town in Ohio, where the biggest scandal was the pastor running off with the choir director's wife. I grew up skeptical as hell, thought religion was just fancy stories for scared people. No college degree, just a string of jobs I hated, swinging hammers on construction sites where the foreman screamed all day, freezing my ass off watching empty parking lots as a security guard, even pouring concrete for church basements while pretending I gave a damn about sanctity. I bounced from state to state because staying anywhere longer than a few months felt like chains. No girlfriend, no roots, just a duffel bag and a habit of disappearing before anyone could ask me to be something I wasn't. That's how I ended up in Rome, October 2023, broke, this jet-lagged, and staring at an email that sounded too good to be true. Vatican Apostolic Archive Restoration Project. Underground maintenance specialist. Night shifts. Cash payment. No background check required. $8,000 a month, tax-free, to patch walls in the holiest basement on the planet. I figured at worst it was a scam, and I'd get a free trip to Italy. At best, well, I needed the money bad enough not to care. They flew me economy, stuck me in a cramped apartment off Via della Conciliazione, where the walls were so thin I could hear the nuns next door praying the rosary at 5 a.m. First morning, a black sedan picked me up, no plates I could read, and drove me through gates most pilgrims never see, down, past the Swiss guards, who looked like they'd snap my neck for breathing wrong. The driver didn't speak, just handed me a badge that said, Personale Autorizzato, Livello Profondo, and pointed toward a side door that looked older than America itself. That's where I met Father Luciano. Picture this, 70-something. Tall but hunched like the weight of centuries was literally on his shoulders, skin the color of old parchment, eyes sunken and gray, always bloodshot, chain-smoked unfiltered nazionali like they were oxygen. His cassock was frayed at the cuffs, stained with what I hoped was just ash, when he shook my hand. His fingers were freezing even through the nicotine yellow. He didn't smile, didn't welcome me, just looked me over like he was sizing up a coffin. Alex Harper, he rasped. Voice gravel dragged across Tombstone. American good. Americans don't believe in anything long enough to get scared. He lit another cigarette right there in the corridor, the flame flickering off marble walls carved with Latin I couldn't read. You start tonight, alone. The lower levels are sensitive, tourists above, God above them. Down here, just you and what's been waiting a very long time. I laughed, nervous habit. Waiting for what? He exhaled smoke that smelled like church incense mixed with something metallic. For someone who doesn't know when to run. He handed me a kit, heavy flashlight, hard hat with a dying headlamp, a radio that looked older than me, and a key ring with tags in Latin. Then he walked me down and down. Elevators gave way to stairs that spiraled like DNA. The air got colder, thicker, tasting of stone and candle wax and something underneath that made my stomach clench. We passed the public necropolis, those neat rows of pagan tombs everyone pays 80 euros to see, then deeper, where the lights stopped being pretty and became bare bulbs strung on frayed wire. The walls changed too. Smooth Vatican marble turned to rough Roman brick, then to tufa stone hacked out when Peter himself was still alive. Luciano stopped at a metal gate that looked W-era. This is your sector, levels 4 through 6. Patch cracks, clear debris, reinforce what's crumbling. You see bones, you leave them. You hear chanting, you ignore it. You smell? He paused, eyes narrowing. You smell something sweet that doesn't belong. You radio me immediately. No heroics. Chanting? I asked, half joking. Like monks doing karaoke? His face didn't move. Like children who never grew up. Then he left me there. Gate clanged shut. Radio crackled once. Harper, check in hourly. And silence swallowed everything. The first few nights were almost peaceful. I worked with headphones in, blasting whatever podcast drowned out the quiet. The tunnels were a maze, some parts pristine like a museum, others collapsing like the city above had forgotten them centuries ago. I found things, a rusted helmet from the war, a child's shoe fossilized in dust, frescoes of saints with eyes scratched out. Normal weird, right? The kind of stuff that makes history nerds cream their jeans. I pocketed a couple ancient coins, sorry, Vatican, and told myself this was the easiest money I'd ever make. But that smell kept showing up, subtle at first, a whiff when I turned a corner, sweet, cloying, like lilies drowning in honey. Then gone. I blamed sewer lines, old incense, maybe some dead priest's cologne. The daytime crew, 3 guys who barely spoke English, shrugged it off. Odore dei santi, one muttered, smell of the saints. They crossed themselves and went back to smoking. By night 10, I was used to being alone, liked it. Even no one micromanaging. No clocks punching, just me and the dark and the soft echo of my own breathing. That's when it decided I was ready. I was in a side tunnel off the main scavi, level 5, reinforcing a wall where water had eaten the mortar like acid. Headlamp on dim to save batteries. Kneeling in dust that tasted like ground bone. The air was colder than usual, breath fogging. Fingers numb even in gloves. I scraped old grout, mixed new, humming some Metallica under my breath to stay sane. Then the smell slammed into me. Not a whiff. A wall. Thick. Wet. Coating my throat. A sweet rotting fruit left in a crypt, mixed with copper pennies and something floral gone wrong. My eyes watered. Stomach lurched so hard I dropped the trowel. I swung the flashlight. Nothing. Just empty tunnels stretching both ways. Arches fading into black. But the smell moved, followed me when I backed up, got stronger, closer, like it was breathing. Temperature plummeted. Frost bloomed on the walls. Actual frost, white and sparkling under my beam. My radio slipped from my belt, hit the ground, went silent. And in that silence, I heard it, breathing, slow, wet, patient, right behind me. I turned, nothing. Then the hand, it settled on my shoulder like it belonged there, heavy, freezing, fingers so long they curled almost to my collarbone. Not claws, not yet, just pressure, like testing ripeness. I froze. Every hair on my body stood up, heart slamming against ribs so hard I felt it in my teeth. The hand squeezed once, gentle, almost curious, then slid up, slowly, nails dragging lightly over fabric, over skin when they reached my neck, tracing the jugular like reading braille, pausing at the pulse hammering there. I couldn't scream, couldn't move, just stood there while those fingers explored, cold burning like dry ice, smelling that sick sweet rot filling my lungs until spots danced in my vision and in the dark behind my eyes. A voice, not sound, but pressure inside my skull, whispered my full name, Alexander James Harper, imperfect, ancient Latin, the exact way my mother said it the night she died. Chapter 2, the book that read me back. The handprint on the wall never fully faded. Luciano scrubbed it with holy water and a wire brush the next day, muttering prayers that sounded more like threats. But you could still see the outline, a faint burn mark in the shape of those two long fingers, if the light hit just right. He told me to forget it. Scars remind us we're alive, he said, lighting up another cigarette with hands that shook just a little. Down here, forgetting is worse. I nodded like I understood, but inside I was unraveling. Sleep came in fits, haunted by that whisper, my name twisted through Latin vowels, echoing like it was spoken from the bottom of a well. Mom's voice, but wrong, distant, hungry. I threw myself into the work harder, hoping exhaustion would drown it out. Days blurred into nights, patching, hauling, sealing cracks that seemed to open faster than I could fill them. Luciano started leaving me extra supplies without asking. More vials, a small silver rosary that felt heavy as guilt, even a battered Bible with pages soft from decades of desperate fingers. I wasn't religious. Hell, I'd mocked the idea my whole life, but I kept them close. Superstition, maybe, or the first crack in whatever armor I'd built against the world. It was maybe 2 weeks after the fresco changed, St. Agnes's lamb still staring at me with that damn raven etched in its wool, that they sent me up to the secret archives annex. Not the touristy part with the pretty manuscripts under glass. This was deeper in the stacks, a forgotten wing where the air tasted like paper dust and regret. A shelf had collapsed during some minor quake. No one felt it topside. But down here, the old wood groaned like it was alive. My job, clear the debris, salvage what I could, reinforce the supports. Simple, mundane, a break from the Necropolis levels where every shadow felt like it had eyes. The annex was a labyrinth of oak shelves towering 20 feet high, crammed with volumes that hadn't seen daylight since the Renaissance. Leather spines cracked and peeling, gold lettering flaked off like dead skin. The lights were these ancient fluorescents that buzzed like dying insects, casting a sickly yellow glow that made everything look jaundiced. Dust floated in the air thick enough to choke on, dancing in my headlamp beam like tiny ghosts. And the smell, faint at first, mixed with the musty tang of old vellum, was back. That sweet rot, seeping from somewhere deep in the piles. I worked methodically, gloved hands sorting through the mess. Most of it was harmless, illuminated Bibles with faded saints, papal bulls yellowed with age, astronomical charts from before Galileo got house arrest. Historians still argue about how much forbidden knowledge the Vatican really hides. Some say the archives hold proof of extraterrestrials or Christ's bloodline. Others laugh it off as conspiracy nonsense. Me? I was just trying not to sneeze my lungs out. Then I found the book. It was buried under a pile of crumbling incunabula, early printed books from the 1400s, rare as hell. This one was different, smaller, thicker, bound in leather that didn't look like cowhide or goat, pale, almost translucent in places, with faint blue veins running under the surface, human skin. I knew it the second I touched it, warm, like it had a pulse, no title on the spine, just a symbol burned deep, a raven, wings spread backward, beak open in a silent scream. The same mark from the fresco, from Luciano's stories about Il Corvo. I should have left it, radioed someone, but curiosity, that old killer, sank its hooks. I brushed off the dust, and the cover felt soft, yielding, like flesh under my fingers. The clasp was rusted iron, shaped like a tiny handcuff. It popped open easy, too easy, with a soft sigh, like the book had been holding its breath for centuries. Inside, the pages weren't paper, vellum, maybe calfskin, but thinner, translucent, inked in a red that looked fresh, script twisting in Latin so old it hurt to read, incantations, from the look of it, diagrams of circles within circles, symbols that made my eyes water, and margins full of handwritten notes, different inks, different hands, spanning hundreds of years. One entry, in faded brown, caught my eye. The binding holds, but the hunger grows. 1947, the raven returns. I flipped another page, and that's when it started. Alone in the aisle, fluorescence humming overhead, dust settling like snow, the pages turned themselves. Not a breeze, not my imagination. They lifted, slow and deliberate, curling like fingers beckoning. 1, 2, 3, stopping on a spread that showed a man on his knees, nose bleeding onto the floor in patterns that looked an awful lot like the sigils around him. The whispers began, soft at first, like wind through cracks, then clearer. Latin, flowing from the book itself? No, from inside my head. Words I didn't know but understood anyway, reciting things so no one should know. The time I stole from the church collection plate as a kid, blaming it on my little cousin, the lie I told my mom about where I was the night she died, out drinking with friends while she coughed her lungs out alone. The girl in Detroit I left without a note, pregnant or not. I never checked. Each sin spoken aloud in that chorus of voices, male, female, child, layered like the chanting Luciano warned about, but personal, intimate. The book was reading me, peeling back layers I'd buried deep. My nose started bleeding, not a drip, a pour, hot and sudden, splashing onto the stone floor between my boots. I pinched it, tilted my head back, but it kept coming, thick rivulets that didn't splatter random. They formed shapes, lines connecting, curving into a perfect replica of the raven symbol, wings backwards with a beak open. The pages flipped again, faster, whispers rising to a hiss. The air thickened, that sweet rot flooding the annex until I gagged on it. Temperature nosedived, breath fogging, fingers numbing around the book that now felt burning hot, like holding a coal wrapped in skin. I dropped it, or tried to. The cover slammed shut on my hand. No, sucked it in, pages clamping like teeth. Pain exploded up my arm, white hot. I yanked back, screaming finally, tearing free with a wet rip that left skin from my palms stuck to the vellum. Blood smeared the open page, soaking in instant, like the book drank it. The whispers laughed, high, childlike, echoing off shelves that seemed to lean in closer. I stumbled back, nose still gushing, sigil complete on the floor glowing faintly red. The book lay there, innocent now, clasp locked. But I swear the raven symbol pulsed once, like a heartbeat. Radio was dead, static only. I grabbed my kit, bolted it down the aisle, shelves blurring past like they were closing in, burst into the main corridor gasping, blood dripping down my chin onto my shirt. Luciano found me an hour later, sitting against a wall, pressing a rag to my face. He took one look at the book in my bag. I couldn't leave it, and his face went ashen. "You opened it?" Not a question. "It's not on inventory," I mumbled, voice nasal from the blood. "How did it know?" "Because it wrote itself into you now." He knelt, fingers probing the tears on my palm, deep gouges, like paper cuts from hell, anthropodermic binding, human skin, from a heretic flayed in 1348 during the plague. The text, a grimoire of confessions, forces the reader to add their own. Your blood sealed the entry. He dragged me to a side chapel, tiny, forgotten, with a font of holy water that looked unused for decades, dunked my hand in, whispering exorcism rites that made the water boil. The pain eased, but the whispers lingered faint, like an aftertaste. "That's just the beginning," he said, bandaging me with cloth torn from his own cassock. "The book doesn't let go. It reads you until there's nothing left to confess. Then it writes the ending itself." I stared at my reflection in the font, pale, eyes wild, and for a split second, the water showed something else, my face, but smiling when I wasn't, raven eyes black as ink. If a book started whispering your darkest secrets right now, would you keep reading or burn the damn thing and run? Comment your choice. I did neither, and that's why things got worse. Chapter 3. The door beneath St. Peter's that wasn't on any map. The whispers didn't stop when I left the archives that night. They followed me, faint as static on a dead channel, curling at the edges of my thoughts like smoke under a door. I'd stuff cotton in my ears, blast music until my phone battery screamed. But there they were, layered voices reciting my failures on loop, pausing every so often to taste a new one, like they were sampling a buffet of regret. The the cuts on my palm scabbed over weird, raised and black, forming tiny ridges that almost looked like lettering if you squinted. Luciano wrapped them in gauze, soaked in more holy water, muttering that the book had tasted me and wouldn't forget the flavor. He locked the grimoire in a lead-lined box behind his office crucifix, but I could still feel it down there, pulsing like a second heart in the Vatican's chest. Work became a game of avoidance. I stuck to the upper levels, patching cosmetic cracks in tourist areas where the lights were brighter and the air moved. But the smell, the sweet rot that started everything, grew stronger the longer I stayed away from the deep. It leaked up through vents, rode the drafts like it was hunting. By the end of that week, it was everywhere, in my apartment sheets, in the espresso I grabbed from the corner bar, even in the confessional booths I passed on my walks, though I hadn't stepped foot in one since I was 12 and lying about stealing candy. Luciano noticed me dragging, eyes ringed black from no sleep. He started leaving notes with my pay envelope. Go deeper, the cracks are spreading. Like he knew resistance was pointless. One shift. The radio crackled with his voice mid-patch. Level 6, East Spur, now. No explanation, just coordinates that matched the bronze door he'd warned me about. I almost ignored it, almost radioed back that I was sick, or quitting, or burning my badge in the Tiber. But the whispers amped up the second I hesitated, hissing my mom's last words to me the night she died. The ones I never told anyone. Fine, I went. Level 6 was different. The stairs down were narrower, cut straight into bedrock, slick with condensation that smelled faintly of myrrh and pennies. My headlamp barely cut the dark. The beam seemed to get swallowed 10 feet out, like the tunnel was drinking light. The air down here was wrong, thick, pressurized, tasting of metal and old incense gone sour, and the smell hit peak intensity, so strong my eyes watered instantly, throat closing like I'd swallowed perfume mixed with roadkill. It wasn't coming from around me anymore. It was coming from ahead, pulling. I followed because what else could I do? The corridor twisted, unmarked. No graffiti or modern repairs, just raw stone etched with faint crosses from centuries ago. Some upside down like Peter's. Scholars still argue if the inverted cross is satanic or a humility symbol. Down here, it felt like both. My footsteps echoed weird, out of sync, like something walked half a beat behind me. I kept spinning, flashlight whipping, but always empty, just the smell thickening, sweet enough to make teeth ache. Then the door. It appeared sudden at a dead end that shouldn't have been a dead end. My map showed the tunnel continuing another 50 meters, but there it was, bronze, green with verdigris except where something had polished it clean in streaks, 8 feet tall, no handle, just a seam down the middle, and a date hammered deep into the metal, MCMX Lips, 1947. The year the war ended. The year the Vatican was supposedly cleaning house. Fresh scratches marred the inside lip, visible where the doors met imperfectly long. Frantic gouges like fingernails dragged from the other side. They gleamed wet, raw bronze showing through patina. New. I don't know how long I stood there. Minutes, hours. The smell poured from the seam in waves. Warm now, almost inviting. The whispers shifted, Latin again, but slower. coaxing. My bloody palm throbbed under the bandage, scabs splitting open. A drop hit the floor, sizzling faintly on stone. The scratches moved. One new line etched itself while I watched, slow as a fingernail growing, curling into the backwards raven I knew too well. I reached out, couldn't stop myself, fingers brushing the bronze, cold at first, then burning hot, like it recognized my blood. The doors shuddered, seam widening a fraction, with a groan of metal that echoed like a dying breath. That's when the hand clamped my shoulder from behind, not cold this time, hot, human. I spun, heart exploding, flashlight beam catching Luciano's face inches away, eyes wild, cigarette forgotten and smoldering on the floor. Step back. His voice cracked like a whip. I stumbled, back hitting the door, metal pulsing now, alive under my spine. He yanked me away hard enough to bruise, shoving a fresh vial into my hand. Pour it on the seam now. I did, hands shaking so bad half splashed my boots. The water hissed where it touched bronze, steam rising with that sweet rot amplified, filling the tunnel until we both gagged. The doors groaned again, scratches freezing mid-etch, then went still. Luciano dragged me back up the corridor, not speaking until we hit level 4 and breathable air. Then he slammed me against a wall, forearm on my throat, not threatening, just holding me upright while I hyperventilated. You weren't supposed to find it yet, he rasped, lighting a new cigarette with fingers that wouldn't stop trembling. The things we locked away after the war, they're patient, but you're bleeding bait now. What things? I choked out. What the hell is behind there? He glanced back down the dark, like it might follow. Nazi occultists we couldn't kill, souls the church bargained for, protection from bombs, from Stalin, from everything falling apart. Rat lines brought bodies out. Some doors brought worse in. That bronze seals a vault where we parked the ones too dangerous to exercise fully. Il Corvo's pet projects. The Raven himself oversaw the sealing, his blood in the alloy. They say it's why the mark follows you. My knees buckled. He held me up. You think the book was bad? He continued, voice dropping to whisper. That was appetizer. The door smells your confession now. Wants the rest. He pulled a folded paper from his cassock, thick vellum, Vatican seal. Sign, updated NDA, covers what you've seen, what you'll see, inks, special. He uncapped a pen filled with red, so dark it looked black. Your blood mixed with chrism binds tighter than regular contracts. I stared. You're kidding. Do I look like I kid? His eyes pleading now, scared. Sign, or walk away and let it open for someone else, someone without holy water in their veins. I signed. The pen dragged like it resisted, name coming out shaky, ink soaked in instant, vanishing, leaving the paper pristine except for a faint raven watermark blooming under the text. He folded it away, expression unreadable. Good. Now listen close. The door stays shut, but it's listening, and every time you bleed, it hears. We walked back in silence, but halfway up. My flashlight caught something on the wall, fresh scratches there too, 5 parallel lines, counting down. If a sealed door in the holiest place on earth started scratching your name from the inside, would you sign the paper to keep it closed, or grab a crowbar and see what wanted out so bad? Tell me in the comments. I'm still not sure I chose right. Chapter 4, The Mirror Room, where reflection takes 7 seconds too long. I started checking mirrors the way alcoholics check bars. Quick, guilty glances, then look away before the truth stares back. The little hand mirror in my apartment went face down the day after the bronze door. The one in the public restroom near the Swiss Guard barracks? I used the hand dryer reflection instead. Blurry, safe. Even puddles on the cobblestones got a wide berth. Because every time I caught my own eyes lately, they looked teared in a way that wasn't just sleep deprivation, hollowed out, like something had scooped out a teaspoon of soul and left the shell. Luciano noticed. He always noticed. He started showing up on my shifts unannounced, materializing from side corridors with that kerosene and nicotine stink, asking casual questions that weren't casual at all. Sleeping all right, Harper? Any new marks on the skin? Heard your mother's voice recently? I lied every time. Yes. No. Of course not. He'd nod, offer another vial, like a bartender sliding one more shot to a drunk who swears he's fine, then vanish again. The job itself got weirder after the blood ink NDA. My key card started opening doors it never had before, service hatches that hissed like they hadn't moved in decades. Grates, leading to crawl spaces where the air tasted like old pennies. One night, the work order simply read, Baroque Chamber, Level 5 West, clean mirrors, do not linger. No signature, just Luciano's handwriting, shaky from too much caffeine or not enough soul. I should have radioed in sick. The chamber wasn't on any map I'd ever seen, tucked behind a false wall in a forgotten transept near the Clementine Chapel. The entrance was a narrow wooden door, painted the same beige as the stone. No handle, just a keyhole shaped like an inverted cross. My new keycard slot was hidden under a rusted plaque that read, Speculum Animi, 1623, Soul Mirror, real subtle, Vatican. Inside was breathtaking and wrong all at once. A perfect octagon, maybe 30 feet across. Domed ceiling painted with faded cherubs whose eyes had been scratched out centuries ago. The floor was black and white marble, laid in a pattern that hurt to follow, like one of those optical illusions that makes you dizzy if you stare too long. And the walls, every inch covered in mirrors, not modern glass, antique, hand-poured silver-backed, warped and wavy from age, framed in gilt that flaked like dead skin, 40 of them at least, all different sizes, some tall as a man, others small and round like portholes into hell. They'd been used for training exorcists once, back when the church still admitted demons could possess a body but not a reflection. The idea was, you forced the possessed to face themselves, literally. The demon would lag behind the host's movements, betray itself in the glass while the priest watched for tells. Historians argue whether Pope Urban VIII really commissioned the room or if it was just Baroque propaganda. Down here, it didn't feel like propaganda. It felt like a trap that had been waiting 400 years for fresh meat. I stepped in to clean, armed with microfiber cloths, silver polish, and the biggest flask of holy water I'd dared steal from Luciano's stash. The door sealed behind me with a soft click that echoed too long. Lights were old chandeliers, real candles, unlit. I flicked my headlamp on. 40 versions of me stared back, distorted, multiplied, all looking slightly more exhausted than the real thing. I started on the nearest mirror, big one, ornate frame carved with screaming faces. The silver was tarnished black in patches, like something had breathed on it for centuries. I sprayed polish, wiped in circles. My reflection copied, slow, half a beat behind. I paused. It paused. I lifted my hand again, faster. It lifted, then caught up with a jerk, like bad stop motion. I laughed, nervous bark that bounced around the room and came back mocking, probably the warped glass. Old mirrors do that. Light bends weird. Depth perception gets screwed. I moved to the next. Same thing. Lag. Worse this time. Almost a full second. My cloth circled, reflection circled late, leaving a ghost trail of my arm hanging in the air after I'd stopped. Heart kicked up. I told myself it was fatigue, low blood sugar, whatever. Kept working. By the 10th mirror, the lag was 3 seconds. I'd smile, forced, testing, and watch the reflection's mouth stretch tardy, like it had to think about it first. The eyes were worse. They didn't match mine at all anymore. Mine were wide, scared. Theirs were curious, tilting, examining me like I was the one behind glass. Then the whispering started, soft, from everywhere and nowhere, layered in the way only mirrors can do, bouncing, overlapping, coming from 40 directions at once. Alex, my mother's voice, the exact timbre she had when she called me in from playing as a kid, warm but tired from the chemo, already eating her from the inside. Baby, why didn't you come home that night? I dropped the cloth. It hit the marble with a sound like a gunshot in the silence. Every reflection smiled now, wide, too wide, teeth I didn't show. I backed up slow, boots scraping. The lag was 5 seconds, 6. I raised both hands. Reflections raised theirs late, palms pressing against invisible glass from the other side. You left me alone, the voices said, 40 moms in perfect chorus, but each mirror a fraction out of sync, so the words rippled like bad dubbing. Coughing blood while you drank with friends who didn't even know my name. 7 seconds now. I turned to run. The door was gone, smooth wall where it had been, mirror in its place. My reflection stood there calm, smiling that borrowed smile, while the real me panicked. Something stepped out of the central mirror, the biggest one, floor to ceiling, frame carved with ravens devouring their own wings. It was me, but not. Same height, same build, same work clothes, stained with centuries of someone else's dust. But the skin was wrong, pale, almost translucent, veins black under the surface, eyes solid ink, no whites, and it only came halfway, waist deep in the glass like the mirror was water, torso leaning out, arms reaching. The lower half stayed submerged, rippling like liquid silver. It opened its mouth, my mouth, and spoke with my voice layered under Mom's. You signed in blood. Alex, time to pay the reflection. Its fingers, my fingers but elongated, nails black and sharp, brushed my cheek, ice cold, real. I screamed, swung the flask like a club. Holy water splashed across its face. The thing hissed, skin bubbling where the water hit, but it didn't retreat, just smiled wider. Teeth too many, and leaned further out, chest now free, ribs showing through translucent skin like a negative photo. The other mirrors cracked in unison, hairline fractures racing across every surface. Shards hung suspended, reflecting infinite versions of the thing wearing my face. I bolted sideways, shoulder checking a smaller mirror off the wall. It shattered on the floor, glass spraying like ice. The reflection in those broken pieces blinked out of sync one last time, winking at me before going dark. The door reappeared behind me, wooden, real, handle cold under my palm. I yanked it open and fell into the corridor, slamming it shut. The click echoed. Final. Silence. Then, from the other side, soft scratching, nails on wood, slow, patient, spelling my name one letter at a time. I ran. Didn't stop until I hit topside air, lungs burning, flask empty on the stairs behind me. If your reflection just smiled when you didn't and started walking out to take your place, would you smash every mirror in your house tonight, or wait and see if it finishes crossing over? Comment what you do. I still sleep with the lights on and the bathroom door locked. Chapter 5. Father Luciano's Final Tape. The Exorcist Who Lost. I stopped sleeping in the apartment after the mirror room. The bed felt too exposed. The crucifix on the wall, now just a reminder that wooden nails didn't stop what was coming. Instead, I crashed in the maintenance shed on level 3, a cramped alcove with a cot, a hot plate, and a lock that at least pretended to work. The whispers followed me there too, softer in the stone womb of the Vatican, but never silent. They'd shifted from my mom's voice to something worse, my own, reciting the blood ink NDA word for word, pausing to laugh at clauses I'd skimmed over in panic. The cuts on my palm from the book had healed into perfect black letters, tiny, cursive Latin no one else seemed to notice. Possessio, one read. Redemptio. Another? Luciano saw them once, went pale, and muttered that the marks were receipts. Whatever I'd signed for was starting to collect. He'd been avoiding me since the bronze door. No more surprise visits, no more cryptic notes. Radio check-ins went unanswered, static swallowing my calls like the tunnel swallowed light. I told myself he was busy. Priests have masses, confessions, whatever but the truth gnawed. Something felt off. The smell was changing too, less sweet rot, more ozone, like the air before lightning hits a graveyard. Cracks I'd patched weeks ago reappeared overnight, wider, edged with that same black residue from my palm scars. One shift. The work order was handwritten again, shoved under the shed door while I pretended to sleep. Office now, L. No radio prefix, no coordinates, just that shaky scrawl. I grabbed my kit, flask half empty, rosary tangled in my pocket like a noose, and headed up. The corridors were quieter than usual, even for off hours. No drip of water, no distant chant. Just my footsteps and the low hum of something electric I couldn't place. Luciano's office was buried in the administrative warren near the archives, a cramped room that smelled like an ashtray mated with a library fire. The door was ajar, light spilling out yellow and weak. I knocked. No answer. Pushed it open. He was slumped over the desk, cassock rumpled, face down in a pile of yellowed files. Cigarette burned to ash between his fingers, smoke curling lazy toward the ceiling like a soul trying to escape. For one gut drop second, I thought he was dead. Heart attack, stroke, whatever finally claims chain-smoking exorcists. But his back rose, fell, shallow. But there, Father? My voice cracked like a teenager's. He didn't move, just slid something across the desk with one trembling hand. A small, black cassette recorder. The kind that hasn't been made since the 80s. Reel-to-reel tape inside. Label peeling. Per Luciano, non aprire. For Luciano, do not open. Play it, he rasped, not lifting his head. Before they take this too, I hit play. The speaker crackled, popped, then his voice, younger, stronger, but already tired, filled the tiny room. Log entry, March 12th, 1998. Father Luciano Moretti. Assigned Vatican Exorcist Corps. Case file redacted. Subject, former SS Sturmbannführer Klaus Adler. Captured 1945. Parked in Subvault Delta beneath the Necropolis. Ratlines brought the body. The ritual kept the soul. Cardinal Revalia, Il Corvo, oversaw the binding personally. Said we were saving Europe from one more demon wearing a uniform. Said the bronze would hold. A pause, breathing. Then a scream, not human, wet, layered, like a dozen throats tearing at once. We tried the rite of major exorcism, bell, book, candle, Latin, German, even Aramaic. The thing laughed, spoke of ovens and experiments at Dachau like they were fond memories. When we weakened, it showed us things, visions, what it did to children, what Revalia promised in exchange for containment. The cardinal never aged after 1945, never left the Vatican, never died, because he fed them, one soul a year, maintenance workers, nuns who asked too many questions, Americans who didn't believe. Another scream, this one human, Luciano's, younger, raw. There were 12 officers parked down there, 12 bronze cells, Il Corvo's choir. We lost 3 priests that night. I was the last one standing when the raven came himself. Black eyes, smile like a knife. He touched my forehead and said, "You'll keep the door, Luciano, until the next one signs?" The tape hissed, fast-forward whine, then recent, his voice now, old, broken, recorded hours ago maybe. "Alex, if you're hearing this, I'm gone. The door's opening. Not all the way. Not yet. Needs fresh blood to grease the hinges. Yours." The book tasted. The mirrors mapped. The whispers? They're his, Il Corvo's. He never left, never died. He's the vault. The bronze is his skin now, grown over decades of feeding. Every worker who signed, every priest who looked away, pieces of him. I was supposed to groom you. Replacement. But I can't. Not anymore. Burn this place if you can. Run if you... The tape cut. Abrupt click. Then static that shaped itself into words. Not on the recording. In the room. Too late. Father. Luciano's head snapped up. Eyes solid black. No whites. Veins pulsing under skin like roots under dirt. His mouth opened too wide, and the voice that came out wasn't his. Italian accent gone, replaced by something Germanic, aristocratic, ancient. Harper, it purred, using Luciano's lips. "You signed so prettily." I backpedaled, flask out, holy water sloshing. The thing wearing Luciano stood slow, joints cracking like old doors, taller somehow, cassock hanging wrong on a frame that wasn't quite human anymore. "The exorcist lost," it said, smiling with too many teeth. "But the raven always finds a new nest." Luciano's hand, no, its hand reached for me, fingers elongating, nails blackening to talons. The backwards raven burned fresh on his forehead, searing through skin. I flung the water. It hit his face, Steam exploded, flesh bubbling, but the thing just laughed, stepping through the pain like it was rain. I ran. Door slammed behind me, but the laugh followed, echoing from every speaker in the corridors, every shadow stretching too long. If the priest who was supposed to protect you just looked up with black eyes and called you by the name you signed in blood, would you fight or start running and never stop? Tell me. I'm still deciding. Chapter 6. The Choir That Sings from Inside the Walls. At 3:33 a.m. after Luciano, I stopped trusting silence. The office was empty when I went back the next night, flashlight shaking in my grip. Desk cleared except for a single ashtray full of cigarette butts arranged in a perfect backwards raven. The cassette recorder was gone. So was he. No body, no blood, just the faint smell of ozone and that sweet rot now mixed with something burnt, like incense dragged through hell. I radioed security, Swiss guards, archivists, anyone, static. Then a soft click, and the speakers crackled with children laughing backward. I ripped the radio off my belt and smashed it against the wall. The laughter stopped, but I knew it wasn't over. Whatever wore Luciano's face had left me a message. The game was still on, and I was the only player left. I holed up in the maintenance shed again, door barricaded with tool chests and a crucifix I'd stolen from a side chapel. Sleep was a joke. Every time I drifted, I heard scratching, slow, deliberate, like nails learning a new rhythm on wood or bone. The marks on my palm itched constantly now. The Latin letters pulsing with my heartbeat, possessio, redemptio, and a new one forming, faint but darkening, cantor, singer. That's when the choir started, first night. I thought it was a dream. Woke up gasping at exactly 3:33 a.m. Phone clock glowing red like fresh blood. The shed was freezing, breath fogging thick enough to write in. Then the sound, Gregorian chant, the kind you hear in movies about monks and miracles, plainchant, pure and beautiful, rising from everywhere and nowhere, not through vents or pipes, from the walls themselves, solid marble, feet thick, vibrating like they had lungs. I sat up slow, heart jackhammering. The melody was Salve Regina, Hail Holy Queen, but wrong. The voices were children, dozens of them, boys and girls, high and clear like cathedral choir boys before their voices break. Except the Latin was flowing backward, not reversed audio, backward like they'd learned it phonetically from the end of the world and were singing it toward the beginning. The notes hung in the air too long, decaying into minor keys that clawed at something behind my eyes. 9 minutes exactly. I timed it with my phone, hands shaking so bad I almost dropped it, from 3:33 to 3:42. Then silence so complete my ears rang. I told myself it was PTSD, grief for Luciano, guilt for running. Anything but real, but the next night, same time, same chant, louder. The walls thumped with it, a sub-bass heartbeat under the voices. The temperature plummeted hard enough that frost bloomed on the inside of the shed door, spelling faint letters I wiped away before they finished. By night 3, I was waiting for it, phone ready, recorder app open. I hit record the second my alarm buzzed, 3:32. The chant started on cue, pouring from the stone like it had been trapped there since the basilica was built. The children's voices layered thicker this time, hundreds maybe, overlapping in impossible harmony. I pressed my ear to the wall. The vibration traveled through bone into my skull, making teeth ache. The Latin backward was perfect, fluid, like a river running uphill. I played it back normal speed first. Just beautiful. Haunting Salve Regina. Made me cry for no reason. Homesick for a faith I never had. Then I reversed it. The voices turned demonic. Not growls. Children still. But wrong. Too fast. Too high. Words tumbling over each other like they were fighting to get out first. And the lyrics weren't Latin anymore. They were names. Maintenance workers, janitors, restorers, people I'd seen in passing, shared coffee with, nodded to in corridors. Marco from Naples, gone 2 weeks ago. Transferred. Elena the archivist, vanished after asking too many questions about 1945 files. Tomasz the Pole, who used to joke about the smell being saints fartin', and at the end of the 9 minutes, clear as a bell in a little boy's soprano that broke my heart, Alexander James Harper. Next. The recording ended with laughter, forward this time, mine, but I wasn't laughing. I played it again and again until the phone battery died and the shed lights flickered like they resented the sound. The names were real. I checked the employee logs the next day. Names crossed out, files sealed, reassigned, stamped in red. No bodies, no funerals, just gone. And now mine was queued up like a song on a playlist from hell. The chant changed after that. Personal. The backward voices started weaving in details only I knew. My mom's maiden name. The street I grew up on in Ohio. The lie I told the cops the night my high school girlfriend overdosed, and I walked away. Each night the 9 minutes got louder, the walls cracking a little more under the vibration. Dust sifted from ceilings like gray snow. One morning I found a child's handprint in the frost on my cot, small, perfect. Fingers splayed like it had reached through stone while I slept. I tried fighting it. Blasted music at 3:30, death metal, podcasts, anything. The chant rose above, children's voices cutting through like knives through cloth. Holy water on the walls evaporated instantly, leaving salt stains shaped like tiny screaming mouths. Prayer? I tried once, fumbling through a Hail Mary I half remembered from childhood. The voices laughed, genuine giggles, then named the priest who taught me catechism before he got defrocked for things the church buried deeper than bones. Luciano's tape haunted me worst. Il Corvo's choir. He'd called the parked SS souls, but these were kids, innocent, or had been. Scholars argue about the Vatican's role in post-war rat lines. How many monsters got clean passports and new lives while their victims rotted. Maybe some victims never left. Maybe the bronze vault wasn't just for Nazis. Maybe it was a battery. And the children were the wiring. Last night, the chant named me again, but slower, savoring. The walls bled something dark and thick, trickling down in reverse rivulets that defied gravity, pooling on the ceiling. I recorded one final time, phone propped against the frost. When I reversed it at 3:42, the little boy's voice whispered extra. Soon, Alex. We've been waiting under the marble since Peter. The Raven needs a new singer. You'll sound beautiful backward. The phone screen cracked in my hand, spiderweb fractures racing outward from the center, forming a perfect backwards raven. Chapter 7, The Index Room, where forbidden books breathe and bite. The choir never named me again after that last recording. Silence at 3:33 a.m. became the new terror, like the children had decided talking was a waste of breath. I kept the cracked phone in my pocket anyway, reversed file on loop through earbuds turned low, a twisted lullaby to keep worse sounds out. The walls stopped bleeding, but the cracks stayed, widening into fissures that wept dust like bone meal. I patched them anyway, hands mechanical, mind numb, eating felt pointless. Food tasted like ash and communion wafers. The marks on my palm had finished spelling. Cantor was complete now. Letters raised and black, itching whenever I passed a library or chapel, like they knew their stage was coming. I avoided the archives after the book bit me, but the work orders didn't care about trauma. One was slipped under the shed door in handwriting I didn't recognize. Blocky Latin capitals. Index vault. Immediate. Shelves unstable. No signature, just a wax seal I scraped off quick. A backwards raven pressed deep. The Index Librorum Prohibitorum. The famous list of books the church banned for centuries was officially abolished in 1966. Paul VI shut it down with a speech about freedom and maturity. Like the Vatican had finally grown up. Historians still argue whether the physical vault was destroyed or just locked and forgotten. Turns out it was the second, and it had been waiting. The entrance was hidden behind a false panel in the secret archives sub-basement. A section marked Condemned Excessus Prohibitus on old blueprints I'd never been given. My key card, the one that kept opening doors it shouldn't, beeped green. The panel slid aside with a sigh that sounded almost relieved. Inside was colder than the Necropolis. Air so dry it sucked moisture from my eyes. Rows of iron shelves stretched into darkness, 30 feet high, packed with volumes that looked angry to be there. Leather spines cracked and peeling, some chained to the shelves like medieval prisoners, titles in Latin, Greek, Arabic, languages I didn't know but felt in my gut were wrong. Galileo's Dialogo. Naturally, copies of Voltaire, Darwin. Even a few modern ones slipped in after the ban supposedly ended. Books on occult practices the church never admitted still scared them. I was supposed to reinforce the supports. Some shelves were leaning, threatening to topple centuries of heresy onto the floor. Simple job, hammer, brackets, done. I started at the far end, working methodically, trying not to read titles, but the books read me. It started with breathing, not wind, not imagination. Every shelf inhaled and exhaled in slow unison, leather covers flexing like lungs under dust. The temperature dropped 20 degrees in seconds, frost spiderwebbed across brass plaques. My own breath came out white, hanging too long before dissolving. Then the whispers, not children this time, adult voices, scholarly, bitter, speaking in overlapping tongues about things the church had buried, heliocentrism branded demonic, evolution called Satan's joke, sex described in ways that would make a sailor blush. I swung the flashlight. Books shifted on their own, spines nudging forward like dogs straining at leashes. One near my head opened by itself, pages flipping fast, stopping on an illustration of a man being flayed alive for printing the wrong words. The caption bled fresh red when the light hit it. I dropped the hammer. It clanged too loud, echoing forever. That's when they bit. The nearest shelf lunged not the wood, the books, dozens at once, snapping off chains like paper. Covers split open into mouths ringed with yellowed page teeth, sharp as razors. One clamped onto my forearm before I could jerk away. Pain exploded white hot, wet, tearing. Blood sprayed across vellum that drank it greedily. Ink blooming darker where it soaked in. I screamed, yanked free, chunk of sleeve and skin gone, bone gleaming white for a second before blood welled. Another book latched to my calf, teeth sinking deep, grinding like it wanted marrow. I kicked, heel connecting with a folio that actually yelped, high and human, before more swarmed. I ran blind down the aisle, books leaping from shelves like piranha, pages slicing air with paper cuts that burned like acid. One caught my ear, tearing half away in a wet rip. Blood poured hot down my neck. I swung the flashlight like a club, shattering spines that bled black ichor smelling of old libraries and new graves. The exit sealed. Panel slid shut with a boom, lock clicking from inside. Lights died, total dark except my headlamp, flickering erratic. Then the shelves started moving, grinding, groaning, iron feet scraping stone, rows rearranging themselves with mechanical purpose, forming walls that closed in. I stumbled through the maze as it built itself around me, books hissing from every direction, nipping at heels, fingers, throat. One got my cheek, teeth scraping bone before I smashed it away. Blood in my mouth now, copper and dust. The labyrinth spelled my name. I saw it from a gap between shifting shelves, old leather spines aligning vertically, titles forming letters, visible only from above or in flashes. ALEXANDER JAMESHARPER. Giant, mocking, 30 feet tall. The books that made the curves of S and R were the worst. Erotica banned in the 1700s, pages still fluttering like tongues. I collapsed in the center, the period after Harper, bleeding from a dozen bites that wouldn't clot. Tried to burn them, lighter from my pocket, flamed to a page. The paper screamed, high, female, and bled faster, blood hissing on the fire, putting it out with wet pops. More books laughed, covers splitting wider. Hours felt like days, trapped overnight while the shelves rearranged endlessly, spelling sins next, adultery, theft, the names of people I'd ghosted, hurts I'd caused. Each new word brought fresh attacks, teeth worrying old wounds open again. Dawn finally came, panel sliding aside on its own with a sigh that sounded satisfied. I crawled out on shredded knees, leaving a trail of blood the books lapped up behind me. The vault sealed, innocent again, but the bites never healed right. Scars spell words now, too, and sometimes, when I'm alone, I feel pages turning under my skin. Chapter 8, The Veil Tears, When the Archives Fight Back. The lunar alignment was written in blood long before I ever signed my name. I found the warning too late, scratched into the back of a 17th century star chart I'd pulled from the index vault during one of my frantic searches for answers. The chart showed St. Peter's Dome, perfectly aligned with the moon's path every 33 years. Historians argue if the basilica's architects knew, or if it was divine coincidence, down here. Coincidence felt like a joke told by something with too many teeth. The next alignment was tonight, November 21st, a blood moon, bloated and red, hanging right over the Vatican like a lidless eye. I'd been hiding in the deepest service tunnels for days, moving like a rat between levels, stealing food from workers' lockers, sleeping in fits with the cracked phone clutched to my chest. The page under my skin had gone quiet, too quiet, like it was holding its breath. The choir hadn't sung, the mirrors stayed dark. Even the books in their vault had stopped whispering, the calm before the storm. And I knew what storm was coming, the bronze door, the one I'd signed to keep shut, the one that had started scratching my name in reverse. I felt the alignment before I saw it, a pressure drop, like the entire city above inhaled and forgot to exhale. The temperature plummeted so fast my teeth chattered. Frost raced across stone that had never seen winter. Then the sound, a low, tectonic groan rising from below, metal screaming as centuries of seals gave way, all at once. The bronze door didn't open. It tore. I was 3 levels up when it happened, huddled in a maintenance alcove with my last flask of holy water and the grimoire page I'd ripped free before burning the rest. The whole Vatican shook. Dust sifted from ceilings like grave dirt. Lights exploded in showers of sparks. Alarms wailed somewhere far above. But down here, the only sound was ripping, wet, organic ripping, like flesh parting from bone on a cosmic scale. Everything converged. The mirrors from the Baroque chamber shattered outward first, glass exploding through walls that shouldn't allow it, shards hanging midair, reflecting not the tunnels, but impossible angles. The index vault's shelves writhing like living ribs. The children's choir faces pressed against bronze from the inside, mouths open in silent backward screams. The books came next, pages flapping like bats, teeth gnashing as they poured through cracks that opened between stones. The sweet rot smell hit like a wall, thick enough to choke on, mixed now with ozone and burning feathers, and the door. I ran toward it, couldn't help myself. The page under my skin burned, dragging me like a hook through the sternum. Corridors twisted wrong, shortcuts that hadn't existed yesterday, stairs leading up that dumped me lower. The bronze vault was wide open, doors bent outward like petals of a rusted flower. Inside, the air shimmered black, reality folding in on itself. It stepped out wearing Father Luciano's face, 12 feet tall, backwards, joints reversed, knees bending wrong, cassock hanging inside out and flayed, showing raw muscle that pulsed with raven feathers. The head, Luciano's head, hung forward on a neck too long, mouth sewn shut with pages from the grimoire, eyes solid black, but weeping holy water that hissed where it touched the floor when it walked. Footsteps came before the legs moved, like time itself was broken around it. Il Corvo made manifest. The merged thing opened its sewn mouth, threads snapping one by one, and the choir poured out, not sound, children, dozens of them, pale and translucent, crawling from Luciano's throat like he was birthing them backward through time. Their eyes were mirrors, reflecting every sin I'd confessed and more. They reached for me with hands that left frostbite burns. The books swarmed it, pages grafting to flayed skin, teeth burrowing into muscle like decorations. Mirror shards orbited the thing's head like a halo of broken promises, each reflecting a different stage of my corruption. The first touch, the book bite, the blood signature, the reflection's kiss. It spoke with every voice I'd heard below. Carrier, it said. Luciano's mouth moving wrong, words coming out before the lips shaped them. The veil is thin tonight. The moon drinks Peter's shadow. Join the choir. I backed against a wall that wasn't there yesterday. Smooth bronze now. Part of the vault grown outward like cancer. The thing advanced, each step erasing distance. Children crawling up its legs like insects. The page in my chest tore open, skin splitting along scar lines, vellum pushing through blood-slick muscle. Words glowed on it, visible to the entity. Instructions. The counter-ritual from the grimoire's final page. The one I'd carried thinking it was a curse, but was actually the lock picking itself free. My hands moved without me, possession or salvation. I couldn't tell. I sliced my palm deeper on a mirror shard, blood pouring in perfect sigils on the floor. The entity paused, head tilting 180 degrees with a wet crack. I spoke the words, not Latin, older, the language the page taught me in dreams, tasting of ash and communion wine gone to vinegar. Each syllable burned my throat like swallowing glass. The children screamed. The books ignited from inside, pages curling black. Mirror shards exploded inward, slicing the entity's borrowed flesh. Luciano's face split down the middle, revealing not bone but bronze, rusted, ancient, the original door grown sentient. The thing roared, a sound that aged the walls centuries in seconds, frescoes peeling to dust. I finished the ritual with my own name, backwards, in blood, sealing the page deeper instead of removing it. The entity collapsed inward, folding like paper burned from the center. Children sucked back into the throat that wasn't a throat. Books crumbling to ash that spelled apologies in Latin no one would read. Mirrors reforming into the bronze door, slamming shut with a finality that cracked ribs. Silence. I slid down the wall, chest a ruin of blood and vellum. The page now fully fused, words tattooed on lung and heart. The alignment passed. The moon moved on. But something walked out with me that night. Not Il Corvo. Worse. The carrier was complete. On Chapter 9, Why Something Followed Me Home and Still Whispers in Latin every night. The page isn't just under my skin anymore. It's in me, woven through muscle and vein like ivy choking a ruin, pulsing with a rhythm that doesn't match my heart. Some mornings I wake to find new scars blooming across my chest, thin black lines connecting the original stitches into a map. A backwards raven spreading its wings from collarbone to navel, feathers etched in scar tissue that itches when storms roll in or when I pass a church. The doctors I dared see, urgent care quacks who don't ask questions for cash, poked and prodded, called it keloid scarring from self-harm or some kind of tattoo infection. They prescribed creams that did nothing. One even joked about stigmata. I laughed until I tasted blood, because that's when the page reminds me it's there, a slow bleed from nowhere, crimson welling up through pores like the skin is paper and the words are leaking ink. I feel it reading me from the inside, every sin I confessed in the index room, every secret the book drank, every name the choir sang. It's all cataloged now, on bad nights. When the fever hits, the scars open just enough to weep a single drop that spells a word on the sheets. Liar, thief, coward. The drop dries black, flaking off like ash from a burned Bible. I've tried cutting it out. Once. In a motel bathroom outside Pittsburgh, drunk on gas station vodka, scalpel shaking in my fist. I sliced deep along the raven's wing, peeling back skin like wet parchment. The page was there, glowing faintly under the fluorescent light. Vellum fused to muscle, words crawling like worms. Carrier complete. Blood poured, hot and wrong, smelling of that sweet rot that started everything. I screamed until the manager banged on the door, passed out in the tub, woke up stitched by my own hands again, thread from the motel's sewing kit, knots perfect, scar already healing into a thicker feather. That's the intimacy of it. It's not possession like in movies, no head spinning, no pea soup vomit. It's quieter, deeper, like the Vatican didn't just let something out. It rewrote me into its new vault. The bronze door might be sealed, but I'm the door now. Walking, breathing, carrying centuries of buried evil across oceans, because some skeptical American was dumb enough to sign in blood. The apartment changes too. This one's a walk-up in Cleveland, peeling paint, radiator that clanks like bones in a box, neighbor who plays polka at 2 a.m. to drown out his own ghosts. I chose it for the lack of mirrors, covered the bathroom one with duct tape and a poster of some band I don't listen to, but reflections find ways. The black screen of my phone when it's off, the toaster's chrome that warps my face into something smiling when I'm not, the puddle in the hallway after rain, rippling with children's faces mouthing my name backward. The chant comes every night now, no matter the time zone, 3:33 local, always. The children sound older sometimes, voices deepening like they're growing inside the walls wherever I am. The backward salve Regina has new verses, cities I've been to, people I've met since escaping. The barista in New York who smiled too long, the trucker in Iowa who gave me a ride and asked about my scars, their names woven in, clear when I reverse the recording I still make, obsessively, on a burner phone that cracks a little more each time. The smell never left either. It's in my sweat now, faint but there, drawing stares on buses or in grocery lines. Old women cross themselves, dogs growl, kids ask their moms why the man smells like dead flowers. I shower 3 times a day, scrub with bleach until my skin sloughs off in sheets. But the page drinks it in, thrives on it, grows. Last month, the tendrils reached my throat. I woke choking on parchment, literally. A flap of skin inside my mouth had lifted, revealing words inked on the soft tissue under my tongue. Sing. I bit it off in panic, spat blood and flesh into the sink. It grew back by morning, thicker. The word now tattooed in reverse, so when I open wide, it reads right in the mirror. The mirror lag is worst. 7 seconds became 10, then 20, now sometimes minutes. I'll stand brushing teeth, ritual to feel normal, and watch the reflection freeze, staring while I move on without it. It tilts its head, curious, touches the glass from inside when I don't, whispers things I haven't said yet, apologies I owe, confessions I swore I'd take to the grave. One night in Denver, the reflection didn't lag at all. It moved first, raised a hand and waved goodbye while the real me stood frozen, toothbrush foaming pink at the mouth. Then it stepped out, just halfway, like in the Baroque chamber. But this time, the lower half was raven feathers, dripping black ichor that spelled cities on the tile, Paris, London, New York. It leaned in close, breath cold as crypt air, and kissed my forehead with lips that tasted of communion wine and ash. That's when I knew the choir wasn't trapped anymore. The books weren't bound, the mirrors weren't walls. They were just waiting for the right body to carry them out into the world, one skeptical heartbeat at a time. I'm filming this in a new place tonight. Motel off I-80, Bible in the drawer, already open to revelation. Pages fluttering without wind. The page under my skin is warm, eager. The chant starts in 20 minutes. I can feel the children tuning up inside my ribs. The church thinks it's contained down there. Bronze door sealed. Secrets buried under 2,000 years of prayer and denial. But whatever they parked in 1945, whatever Il Corvo became when he stopped aging and started feeding, it didn't want escape. It wanted distribution. And I'm patient zero. If you're watching this and the clock just hit 3:33, if the air in your room turned sweet and wrong, if you just heard children singing backward from your walls, pause the video, check your scars, then comment your city below, because it's already spreading next week. I'll tell you what answered when I went to the Paris catacombs looking for a cure. They weren't empty. And what followed me back from there? Well, turn on notifications. You'll want to know before your name joins the choir.